and welcome to Ben's Junk, the show that isn't cool enough to do the whole cult movie showing VHS tapes at a drive-in somewhere sort of thing. So of course, yeah, I have to do my little homebrew one-man band thing. But anyway, yeah, there's going to be a lot of very stupid jokes in this one. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to discuss a projector today. And normally when you think Oddity Archive and projectors, you probably think more, 8mm, that sort of thing. But no, this is a bit more modern than that. So what we have here makes me feel a bit old. It is the Optoma PK320 Pico pocket projector. And it makes me feel old because, well, the date on the box says 2011, but all the reviews I found for this thing are from 2012 and especially 2013. And of course I started making Archive in 2012. So when I was starting to do Archive, this was the hot new thing, which has finally, after 12, 13 years, maybe closer to 14 years, has finally fallen down the chain far enough that I can actually get my hands on it and play with it a bit. Not that I was aware of this when it first came out. But anyway, yeah, so a Pico pocket projector. And yes, to my utter dismay, when I first turned it on, I was not greeted with pictures of a lovely mild salsa. But I suppose I could supply my own pictures and, plug it in and all. But anyway, this definitely qualifies for Ben's Junk status in that it does have its saving graces, but half of it is just utter garbage. And unfortunately, I was not able to fully test this thing because, well, it shows you all these things you can hook up to it. But what it doesn't tell you is how many adapters you are going to need. And they did not come with this at the time. And this used model I bought didn't even have all the period proper packed in stuff with it. So I had to go back and get some more parts just to try this out. And also, just on the side here, you can see all the file types it plays for video. And that's a total lie. So yeah, you can plug in a micro SD card, but it ain't going to play your video files. It doesn't matter if you have it formatted properly and the file sizes are small enough and all. It ain't doing it. And this is new enough that there was firmware attached to this, but I cannot find it archived anywhere. And Optoma, which is still in business, does not have it on their website. So I don't know if it's the final version of the firmware on this. I would be willing to bet heavily it isn't. So that somewhat impeded my testing of this. But anyway, I think I've done a long enough intro here. Let me take a cut here. We'll look at the proper unit and we'll, have party time. Well, here's the unit. And when they say Pico projector, they mean it. I mean, this thing is, I'd say, slightly smaller than maybe the last of the cassette Walkmans. That's the best descriptor I can think of for this, and probably weighs about the same too. I'd guess this weighs only 3 or 4 ounces. Real nice and lightweight, which actually did turn out to be a bit of a hindrance in my testing. So anyway, we'll start with my first gripe about this. Here's most of the controls here. So it doesn't necessarily correspond to like volume up, volume down, maybe chapter forward, chapter back, that sort of thing. But instead it gives you, at least from the home screen, menus of 6 options, and you have to pick, okay, it's the top left option you want, you hit the top left button. And if you're watching something, you're in a particular mode, HDMI mode, for example, you got the home button at the bottom. Now, the power button is actually this tiny little thing at the side. And also, frustratingly, you can turn this off with the remote control, but you can't turn it on. So you turn it on first, then adjust. So anyway, let's look at this side here. I was kind of lamenting about micro SD earlier. This does have a micro SD slot here, but it does not read video files. Now, I made sure that I had it in the proper format, FAT32, nothing that wasn't on their list of supported file types, codecs, and it just would not do it. The only thing I was successful with the micro SD card was audio. And if, God forbid, you try and throw something gapless at it, it's going to be a bit disruptive between tracks. You're going to look at not a long gap, but maybe about 1 second. So it is a little disruptive. But then again, there are other ways to play music through this audio stuff. So there are workarounds. So anyway, for what it's worth, there's the lens. Like most projectors, you got the focus knob kind of baked in. And this did not have a lens cover. I don't know if it ever did. I kind of wish it did, just for my own peace of mind. So anyway, if we look on the back here, we'll start on this side this time. We got micro USB, and this did come with a micro USB to standard USB plug, so cord rather. So you can, I guess, like hook to a computer if you wanted to. But I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to do except maybe a flash drive, but I didn't have any way of, I only have full-sized regular USB ones. So I would have needed some sort of micro USB to female USB full-size adapter. And yeah, and I feel like I've spent enough on this already. So anyway, working our way back, we have audio output, and it's a standard 3.5mm jack. It will output stereo. For AV input, it's 2.5mm tip ring sleeve. Of course, we have the spot for the power adapter, mini HDMI, which necessitates the use of an adapter cable, so the full-size HDMI on one end, and then the mini on the other. And then lastly, universal I/O, which first and foremost is used with a VGA adapter, which does not come with this. It did not come with it at the time, and my used one here did not come with such a thing. And that was kind of my big other lament. Looking at the manual, it touts, and on the boxes I showed earlier, it shows all these things that you can hook up to it, but you need all these funky adapters. So, and it did not come with them at the time. So, yeah, that's kind of a negative as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, I'm going to put this aside here. It does come with a nice little carry case. Having said that, boy, this sucker gets hot. So if you're going to put it back in its case, you need to let this sit for like a couple of hours to cool off before you put it back. Otherwise, here's the remote, and it kind of corresponds to the top of the unit. Basically, the only additions are the off button, explicitly off. You can't turn it on with this. Brightness, which has 4 settings if memory serves, and then just quick buttons to VGA, the universal I/O, HDMI, and composite video. And the battery in here was totally shot, so that was one more supply that I had to invest in. But yeah, I could have used a couple more options on the remote here. Otherwise, here's the aforementioned micro USB to standard USB cable, but I couldn't really think of anything I wanted to hook up. I would rather have run maybe a bigger flash drive to the unit, but yeah, that wasn't happening. And you know, I have laptops with HDMI outputs, so I don't want to, that'd be kind of a step down, wouldn't it? So here's the other main adapter cable, 2.5mm tip ring sleeve on one end, to composite video and stereo audio, all female. And this was frustrating. So it mentions iPods in the manual, of course, this being, we'll say 2011, 2012. But yeah, I can hook my iPod up through Apple's own adapter, which came out the butt of the iPod, and then it branches out to the three, yellow, red, and white cables. And I can do video stuff on my iPod Classic, but it will not pass audio only. You only get audio if there's video attached to it. And another kind of lament I have with these cables is they are very thin. They are not well shielded at all. And of course they have ferrite chokes, which they might need anyway. Having said that, I did get a little distortion at times. And indeed, here's another little lament of mine. There is a built-in speaker right here at the tip of my finger, but it is truly not powerful. And if you do actually pass something loud enough to really properly be audible through this, it's going to be distorted because you're overloading it. And you kind of have the same problem with the output. You kind of have to dink around with the audio levels. So when I did all my tests for this, I should note I've already done all that stuff and shot it, of course. I could, really crank the audio if I needed to in my camcorder. But if I cranked the audio on this as opposed to the audio on the camcorder, you really hear the inner workings of this. You hear a lot of buzzing and just all around nasty interference. And I tried, moving the camcorder away, thinking maybe there was a little bit of interference that it was creating, but no, it's just not very well done. But if you can dial it in just right, and I should note, if you are using something like this and you want decent audio, have a set of powered speakers handy. You're not going to have much luck with passive, and you're not going to hear a damn thing out of that little built-in speaker. Otherwise, this is one thing I had to buy myself. So, HDMI to mini HDMI. I have some micro HDMI stuff, but no mini, so yeah, had to invest in that. And I'm sure this came with a power adapter at the time, but whoever owned this first lost it, or I don't know what happened, so I had to figure out the specs and just pick up a generic, but it works just fine. So otherwise, I mentioned the whole micro SD thing. I had to bust out my only micro SD card. I've only ever owned this one. It's just not something I need a whole lot. And this adapter of mine is falling apart. Once upon a time, when I got my first HD camcorder. Otherwise, here's probably my biggest complaint about this. It is lovely that the projector only weighs 3 or 4 ounces, but the tripod here weighs in maybe an ounce and a half, if I had to guess. So you put this on here, and these aren't exactly the heaviest cables in the world, but they're still plenty heavy enough that you try and use the stand here, and guess what happens? Everything goes crash, boom, bang on you. And thankfully, this is robust enough that it survived the few tumbles it took. But yeah, very quickly I just started putting this on a proper hard surface and told this thing to go to hell. So anyway, there were some, I was ultimately able to do everything I wanted to, maybe not as conveniently as I wanted. So a success on that front, but I did have one nice pleasant surprise with this one. So one thing I wanted to try was 3D, old-fashioned 3D with the blue and red glasses. Was that anaglyphic, I think they call it? So I dug out this DVD, and the main program is not in 3D, but it does have this little short on it, Asylum of the Insane in 3D, which is really just somebody's home movie, somebody just testing out some 3D equipment. There's nothing scary about it. It certainly does not live up to the title. If anything, I'm sure the title is intended as a joke. But anyway, I was able to get 3D out of it about half the time. So what happens is the refresh rate on this seems to vary a little. So when I was watching Asylum of the Insane, the effect would kind of drift in and out. But those moments where it worked really nicely. But yeah, if you are going to watch something 3D with this, be prepared for it to drift on you a little. And yeah, I do have footage of it, but it's probably not going to work. That old-fashioned 3D footage generally does not work on flat screens, at least in my experience. I've never had success with it. So it was a pleasant surprise for it to actually work with a projector here. Otherwise, as I've been kind of hinting at, if not outright saying, I shot all my tests with this one ahead of time. So this is the last thing I'm doing for this video here. So with that, I'm going to shut up, and anything else I have to say will be better served in tandem with the tests in progress. So yeah, I'll talk to you again soon.
Hate, sensuality, and unbridled passion. All the things in my life I've managed to suppress.
I'm talking about the still ongoing, still popular digital versatile disc, or DVD.
This is DVD.
So to celebrate, I've got
World's most pissed off snow cone.